Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. That is Psalm 147, verse 3. I'm your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, where it is my joy to encourage and equip you for your parenting journey. I am an adoptive mom, like many of you. I've got over 26 years of lived experience parenting kids from hard places, as we sometimes call them. My oldest biological child, I guess we can't call him a child anymore because he's 35 and has 36 and has children of his own. So I've been doing this for a while, lots of different levels. And of course, having raised, still am raising some of them, but my husband and I have 5 children through adoption, 2 prenatally exposed to alcohol. So, I get it. I know the ups, I know the downs, the joys, the heartaches, the sorrows, the challenges, been down this road, am on this road. And I really hope that this podcast will become an invaluable resource to you on your parenting journey. It is a resource that I wish I had in those early days of parenting. After we had adopted our kids, after we brought home or welcomed into our home our first child through adoption, who was actually a kinship placement. So, like I said, I get it. I'm with you. And this podcast is for you. So also, I want to invite you to like and follow our new The Adoption and Foster Care Journey social media pages. We have an Instagram page and a Facebook page, sort of moving that stuff, our social media over to our own space instead of just always posting on the Justice for Orphans page, because JFO does tons of things, including Care Portal. We've got lots going on, and we really wanted to have a special place that was just for our resources for adoptive and foster parents. So I hope you'll check out, find those pages, follow them, the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. And I look forward to connecting with you there. I'm trying to be faithful to posting and really interacting. So I hope you'll check that out. Today, we have with us Angela Proctor, PhD. Dr. Angie currently serves as the Director of Trauma Competency and Implementation at Boys and Girls Country of Houston in Hockley, Texas, where she is tasked with transforming the culture and residential programming to a team-informed milieu, specifically using TBRI, Trust-Based Relational Intervention. She has spent over 25 years teaching, training, coaching, and counseling families and professionals through her skills as a developmental psychologist, chemical dependency clinician, TBRI monitor, and research analyst. Dr. Proctor is also the founder of Trust-Based Counseling and Consulting LLC, and recently published her first book, When Self-Care is a Dirty Word, Understanding and Taming the Stress Response of a Caregiver. She is passionate about working with individuals who find themselves struggling in the midst of stress and overwhelm of trauma and adversity. Angie's desire is to serve anyone who has experienced deep trauma, attachment, and developmental issues. This includes not only parents and children, but educators, social workers, therapists, healthcare professionals, law enforcement, and anyone who must navigate challenges through relationships in their career. Dr. Proctor has dedicated her life and career bringing her expertise and knowledge to small audiences as well as organizational consulting and professional conferences around the world. And we are thrilled to have her with us today. Please welcome Dr. Angie Proctor. Hey, Angie.
Hey.
I am so excited to have you on the show. I know I've been wanting to meet you. We've been in some of the same conferences. I don't think we've even really connected in person. So we definitely have to meet up this fall at CAFO when I come to your state, Houston.
Yes,
That's right, Houston, Texas area. So we'll take a selfie together so that we can commemorate the moment. So I'm so
absolutely.
yeah. And I read your bio to introduce you and what a bio it was. So I'm just curious to know, how did you get started in the work that you're doing today? Why are you so passionate about what you do?
Yeah, that's such a long story.
Go ahead,
So
tell us.
first off, I have an adopted sister. My dad and stepmother adopted a young girl. I think she was around 7 years old at the time. She had lived with them for maybe a year or two before they adopted, but it came to them through just some people that they knew. It was a private adoption. She was living with her, I believe it was her great aunt and uncle. And, just like a lot of kids that I've worked with over the years, having elderly caretakers, especially for a young girl like that, she needed people with more energy and the ability to do more with her. And so they adopted her, and I was actually in college. So I was already out of the house and away at college. But then, of course, they would come visit me, and I would come home in the summers and that kind of thing. And now she just turned 40 years old. She just had a birthday this last week. Has her own family. Her children are grown. And so it's been a really fun journey watching her grow from all of that experience. Um, and I don't even know that that's really where it started. My dad was a youth minister as a kid when I was a kid, and so really I've always been around working with children in some form. And so I'm sure that's probably where the initial seed was planted. And then when I went to college, this is a funny story. I thought that I was gonna wanted to be an orthodontist. And so, of course, I had to go pre-med, pre-dentistry, and, rocking along that first semester freshman year. And, oh, yeah, I can do chemistry, pre-med chemistry. I did fine in high school chemistry. No, that's not the same. That's not the same. So I didn't do very well. And so when I went back the next semester, that second semester, my freshman year, I tried the second semester of chemistry and it was not any better. And so I decided, okay, I need to look at something else. And so what is that? And I decided that I wanted to um, kind of become a counselor. My dad never had formal training as a therapist, but as a minister and a pastor, he did a lot of pastoral counseling and kind of self-read and just really kind of had a gift working with people. And I thought, okay, you know what? I think I might want to do that. And so I got my degree in psychology. And then after I graduated with that, I went straight back in. I was married. My husband and I married like right before I graduated with my bachelor's degree. And then immediately after that, I went right back in and started a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And so initially, I kind of thought that I would do more family therapy, private practice, not necessarily focus on children, but I just thought just kind of your traditional therapy, counseling, things like that. Um, and as a part of that program, there was a lot of work with addictions. One of my professors, that was his specialty. He was an addictions therapist as well as a marriage and family therapist. And he was into adventure therapy. So many of us went through ropes course certification and all of that. In the middle of that, he was starting his own. Treatment center for young men addicted to drugs and alcohol. And so we kind of watched that process, and that was really fun. But then when I graduated, my husband and I moved from, that was in Arkansas. And so we moved from Arkansas to Texas because our families were in Texas. And so I, growing up, my dad was was a youth minister, and our church would sponsor a group home east of Dallas. It was called Bowles Children's Home. And they just celebrated their 100th year this year. Yeah, and so I always wanted to know what that was about because I was too little at the time, but my dad would take kind of the aging out, the kids that were about to go to college, kind of in the middle that summer before they went away to college. He would take them to all of the children's homes that our church supported over the summer. It would be a fun trip for them to go to, and I was too young to do that, but I always was curious about what is this thing. And so my husband and I, interestingly enough, moved to a town that was just about 10 minutes away from Bowles Children's Home. And so was telling my husband, we really need to go visit, go see what that's all about. And I had taken a job. We moved to that city because my husband was transferred through his job. And so I just kind of found a job. It wasn't something that, we needed to move. I needed to get something. And so I was working for what used to be called MHMR, mental health, mental retardation, but now they don't use those terms anymore, and it's called something else. But I took a job working there, and I really didn't like it very much. Didn't really like the people, and I was really overqualified for the position that I was in, but it was something that I just needed something. And I started telling my husband, I really need to look for something else. And in the meantime, he was a manager for a sporting goods store in the city that we lived in. And so anybody that wanted, some sort of athletic exercise shoe would, come into his store. And so he met a couple that worked for Bowles Home one time. And he just happened to say, my wife is kind of looking for something else. And they said, oh my goodness, we need a social worker. And so he said, well, I'll talk to her about it. And I think he gave them my phone number. And so I wasn't trained as a social worker. I just had a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in marriage and family. So really, I was even overqualified for being a social worker too, but I didn't care because I needed something else. And so I think it was like 4 months later, the administrator for that children's home called. And this was back when we had pagers. You remember that? Like when you had this
Yeah.
pager and they called you and it beeped and all that. You had to call them back. And so I almost didn't call them back because it was from an area that I didn't cover for my job. But then I thought, oh, I don't want to get in trouble for missing a call. So I called, and sure enough, his name's Johnny Adams. He was the administrator for Bowles and at the time. And he just said, I know you don't know me, but I know you have met, the Wolves, and they said that you might be looking for something. And I said, I really am. And so we kind of talked for a minute. And I just said, just tell me where I need to be. I would love to meet with you and interview. And so anyway, that's how it all really, really started as far as like children, foster care, adoption, that kind of thing. And so I took that job as one of their case managers, and did that for about 6 years, and then kind of moved my way up in the organization. I became the director of their therapeutic services for a little bit, oversaw all of the therapy and any of the kind of the contract. We had a psychologist that would come in and provide assessments and that kind of thing. And then before I left the organization, I was the director of residential services, I was over all of the direct care staff, all of the case management, that kind of thing. So it was kind of a bigger position. So I was there for about 9.5 years. And then there were some changes in that organization. And so it was time for something else. And by the way, in that time, I was introduced to trust-based relational intervention, TBRI, and many of us went through training with Dr. Purvis and Dr. Cross. And so I had an opportunity. The psychologist that worked with us worked for a university that was about 30 minutes away. It's a subsidiary of Texas A&M University, and she knew that I wanted to go back to school, but I had gone to private university and was still paying on my student loans. And by the way, I'm still paying on those student loans today. Uh, and so she knew I would never go back if I had to pay for my tuition. So a position opened up at the university, actually working for her, and she offered me an opportunity to come work for her at the university. And that way, it allowed me to go back to school and get my PhD. So in the middle of all of that, the institute, the Care and Purpose Institute, around 2015 started the model where they utilize TBRI mentors as a part of their training, their professional trainings. And so I was invited to be a part of that. And so I've been a mentor since 2015. No, I'm sorry, 2016. I jumped in the next year. So for almost 10 years, I've been a mentor with the Institute. And so I get to travel. In fact, I'll be going to Charlotte, North Carolina here in a couple of weeks to the next practitioner training. So that's been super fun. Have had a really close relationship with them for many, many, many years. And have done a lot of contracting and travel. I've been to Brazil with the Institute, just it's been a wonderful, wonderful thing. I have a private practice that I not very often because I also have a full-time job too, but I've done parent coaching. My dissertation was on how parent coaching can help people. Um, we looked at people going to trainings and then how it impacted them to have someone supporting them after those trainings. And of course, huge significant impact when you have somebody that's walking alongside you after you've gone through training rather than, oh gosh, how do I do that? Like, what was that TBRI stuff? I don't remember. So that was a really fun thing. And so I kind of created my private practice out of that research. I've done some grant works. I had an organization in Arkansas that asked for help in some data collection and reporting. So I had a group of people working for me that helped analyze and report for their grant reporting, and that was amazing. It was a group of uh, counselors that were providing trauma-informed training to teachers in Arkansas. Um, so I've done a lot of stuff, and my full time right now is I work currently for an organization called Boys and Girls Country of Houston. We're located northwest of Houston. So if you're leaving Houston and heading towards Austin or San Antonio, we are just about 30 minutes from downtown in Hockley. We're actually in this little city called Hockley. And we serve about 40 children that are between the ages of 5 and 18. And we also, those children, when they graduate high school, if they want to, they can transition into our college and career program. And we have about 17 kids that live on campus that are in that program. And we support them through college, or if they want to do a trade, or if they want to go to beauty school or just a 2 year, an associate's degree. We continue to be a support to them as long as they need it. Well, I say that up to probably about age 25. And we've got people that have come back to us that they've gone off on their own and then they've come back and said, hey, I really would like to go back now and get my college degree. Would you help? Yes, we will do that as well. So it's just been a really fun, wonderful thing. My job here at Boys and Girls Country, it's this crazy long title. I'm the Director of Trauma Competency and Implementation. But that's just a really long way of saying they wanted to bring trauma-informed practices to Boys and Girls Country, and they knew that I had done that in many places, and so particularly TBRI. And so I am charged with teaching all of the staff, not just the direct care staff, but I mean our CFO, our human resources, our operations folks, everybody that's on campus is learning what it means to be trauma informed and trauma competent. And it's been a wild ride. It's been hard. It's been fun. But I tell you, this last year, we really are seeing a lot of fruits of our labors, the changes that we're making in it, and it's really a good thing. So I know that's a long story.
Well, I asked the question, right? But it's fascinating, your journey and how you're serving children and families and professionals, and being trauma informed is huge. I know our first experience with bringing children into our home, outside of our three bios, was a kinship placement, right? A little girl of 8 years old who came to live with us. And because she came to us, she didn't go into foster care. So we had zero training. We had no idea. We just thought, well, we'll parent her like we'll parent our other children. Wouldn't that be just nice? And patted ourselves on the back. You're laughing because you know that was pretty disastrous. And it was for a number of years. And we slogged through. We adopted her eventually. And she's now 30. I think she's gonna be 35 this summer. So we have a good relationship now, but it was pretty disastrous in her teens and in her 20s. It was really rough because we were not trauma informed. And with we adopted internationally after that. And the first three kids came and we still weren't trauma informed. And somehow things were going along pretty well the first few years until we went back and adopted their youngest sibling, who was 5 and had spent all of his first 5 years in an orphanage. The second we were introduced to him in the orphanage, I was like, oh, this is that fetal alcohol syndrome I read a tiny bit about. We are not equipped to parent this kiddo. So, and he did get that diagnosis eventually, but there were no resources that I found. But I
Yeah.
did find The Connected Child and devoured that book, and then ordered all of the DVDs that Texas Christian University had put out with Dr. Purvis doing all the talking. And we
Mhm.
flew from New York to Nashville to sit in on one of the early
Empowered to
Power to
Connect.
Connect, where she
Yes.
herself, Dr. Purvis, was teaching. My husband and I went on to become Empowered to Connect parent trainers under the Norths, that I'm sure you know, Brian and Kayla North.
Yes.
Yeah, so we were doing all of that, so it's so vital. And I still advocate anytime anybody, comes to me and or reaches out and is considering becoming an adoptive or foster parent. I have a list of resources that are must reads and do's, and
Mhm.
Connected Child and now Connected Parent are books that are on that list, as well as becoming FASD informed, which is, the area that I focus on. But so important. And I love all that you're doing, and I'm so grateful for it. And you serve a vast, really group of people in your work, from families and children and professionals. Our audience here on the podcast are primarily adoptive and foster parents and kinship caregivers. We're caring for those kiddos who've experienced trauma and adversity. And we have experienced, us parents, as you know, have
Yeah.
experienced tremendous levels of stress. So I'm so excited about your book, which I want to get to. But let's start out, Angie, as parents and caregivers, how does that stress affect our bodies and brains?
Oh, yeah, right. So just like our kids go through hard stuff, so do we. And here's the fascinating piece. We bring what we've had previous to becoming a parent, we bring that to the story, right? And so when we become a parent, whether it's a biological parent, foster parent, adoptive parent, doesn't matter, we bring those patterns and those things with us. And if we're not aware of those things, boy, we're hit right in the face with those things not if, when our kids bring that to us. And so there's that piece. So the attachment piece, understanding what your attachment patterns are, your style is, it is one really important thing. But then also our tragedies, our adversities, and when our children have experienced their stuff and they bring to the table, then we come together and we've got to figure out how are we going to navigate this. And what often happens, and I'm not going to say what often happens with people I work with. I'm a part of that. Every single human being experiences this. What happens is you have a sticky situation with your kiddo, and you both are facing your histories
Mhm.
But as an adult, the hope is that we are aware of our history so that we can set the history side up, aside so that we can be emotionally present for our children. And what often happens is we're either not aware that we're bringing that history, or we've pushed that history back, hoping that it's just going to go away, which it doesn't. And then it bubbles to the surface because we're triggered. Um, or we are aware, but we don't know what to do about it. We don't have any strategies to hopefully mitigate what's happening in the moment. And so a lot of work that I do now, my work is there's some private practice, not much, but the most of it is working with my direct care staff here at Boys and Girls Country and helping them to become aware of, oh, that's why every time that child tells me a lie, I just fly through the roof because
Mhm.
that's something that happened way in my past and I haven't really worked through that. And I always say it is a journey. We will probably never completely process everything that we've experienced. It's not about being fully healed from everything because we're going to have hard stuff happen for all of our life. But it's about being aware, being mindful, and knowing, "Ugh, that's my stuff." And so if I know, okay, this thing, this lying thing really stems from something that happened before I was a parent. Um, and I need to look at my child and my child has a need. This behavior may not be helpful for them or me. It may be very destructive, but how can I be curious about what's happening with this child so that I can understand what is that need beneath the behavior. So anyway, we bring what we have together, and then as the adult that should be the person that can help that child work through that situation, sometimes we get stuck with our history and we've got to be more mindful and work through that process.
Yeah. Wow. And what kind of, because I know it has it engages our nervous system, right? So where does that stress come from, and what kinds of things could parents and caregivers who have significant levels of stress, um, what does that look like?
Yes. So yeah, the body keeps the score, right? Bessel van der Kolk. And you cannot trick the autonomic nervous system. What we feel is what we feel, you know? And so that stress comes through, I'm triggered by either a memory or an experience, or something makes me feel uncomfortable, unsafe. And so then, of course, our body is divinely designed, to survive. And so we do what it takes. That might be your fight. You might protect yourself in the moment, whether it's physically or arguing with someone or, whatever it is. Or you might, I got to get out of the situation. Flight. I flight from that situation. I avoid it with the plague. I don't want to deal with it. Or I freeze. Maybe if I just sit here and not say anything, or maybe if I just don't show up, maybe, it'll just all fizzle. And then, of course, we've also talked about fawn, which is the person that placates to everybody. I'm going to do everything for everybody. Everything's going to be okay because that's your way of controlling, supposedly controlling the situation and helping you to feel a little bit better. So, your body is designed to protect itself in those different ways. And when you do that, then if you end up going into fight, flight, freeze mode with your child, then they can't do anything else but go into fight, flight, freeze mode. Because if mom or dad, the adult in the situation, is feeling threatened and protecting themselves, then that mirror neurons, right? We feed off of each other. Then that child is thinking, oh, okay, if mom can't handle it, then I don't know what to do, and I've got to take control in this situation. So now I'm going to go and fight, fight, phase, and then all of a sudden you have this kind of explosion. So that's why it's really important for us to have strategies, calming strategies that we know work for us, and it's different for everybody. Some people just need to take a walk. Some people like physical activity. Some people need to go take a warm bath when they feel triggered. Some people can just count to five and distract themselves. Just this morning, we were in a session with some of our staff members, and we were talking about the empowering principle of TBRI and talking about my check-in question was, what is your go-to calming strategy? And one person said, well, when I get in the what was really cool is they said, well, it's different for just, I know I need to calm in general. I need some space and some time, self-care versus in the moment. I may have a different go-to in the moment, which I thought was really cool. It kind of came about on its own. But one person said, in the moment, I start looking for different colors and I find the color that is least common. So I'll find red, and then I'll try to find another red, and then another. And so that she said that distracts her enough that that kind of gets her body to kind of start calming down. May not work for anybody else but her. Many people talked about music, so there's all kinds of things that we can do to help our bodies to calm down. Breathing is, huge. And just taking big, deep breaths through the nose and blowing out of the mouth a couple of times can be helpful. So, it's really important for us to know what those strategies are. Otherwise, we're just stuck and our bodies are just flipped.
Yeah. And so we're talking about this with ourselves because I think parents and caregivers, we're so used to thinking about stress and fear, and we need to disarm fear, and our kids will respond in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, like you mentioned. So we're used to, if we've had that trauma-informed training for our kids, we think about it as applying to our kids. But we don't often, I don't think anyway, stop and think about ourselves and how we experience stress. We can experience fear. You mentioned we can be in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, right? That can be us. We need to self-calm. We need to be able to regulate, and we need to have those strategies for ourselves. So just that's the perspective we want to talk about today is we're talking about us as parents and caregivers and what we need so that we can be in the best shape to be able to help our kiddos. So love this conversation. And Angie, when I was in Chicago for Replanted, I picked up a copy of your book. I'm going to hold it up for
Yes.
anybody who might be
Yeah.
watching the YouTube. But it is When Self-Care is a Dirty Word, Understanding and Taming the Stress Response of a Caregiver. I love it. So, self-care, those who may be listening or watching might be thinking, oh, not that again. But we really want to unpack the importance of self-care today, why we need it, how we can get it. So let's start with what might be some signs for us that it's time for us to start taking self-care seriously.
Yes. So if you find that you can't focus, like if you have several tasks that you need to get done and you can't, maybe you're so overwhelmed that you can't focus enough to get the tasks done, or you're just almost kind of like a depressive state. I don't even want to move, like I don't want to do anything. Um, Feeling triggered, like your body is feeling very jittery. And we talk about like kind of the engine plate with our kiddos and the red, how it's like the engine of a car and it's like you're pushing the gas and it's revved up. I can't even stop. My body, my heart is palpitating. I don't feel good. Um, not If you find that you're don't have compassion for the child that you're trying to serve, we call that blocked care, and that comes from having to protect yourself. You may be experiencing secondary trauma from the child's trauma and what they bring to the household. They're not only the child is traumatized, but what they're doing because they don't have the coping skills yet to really, and they don't maybe not have the calming strategy. So they're traumatizing the household, and so you are taking that on and experiencing that. So that secondary trauma can really be the cause of you deciding I need to protect myself, and so therefore you don't think I'm blocking my care, but that's what ends up happening because you become apathetic. You become there are some parents that will say, I am so embarrassed to say this, but I don't even like my child. I wish I'd never adopted this child, because you come to the point where you are so overwhelmed and so stressed, there's no hope. And so that's why it's so important to have some sort of outlet. It's great if you have friends that you can talk to, have a wonderful therapist to talk to. That's really important. But you can also have very simple techniques that just take you away for a moment. Not everybody's able to go get their nails done and their hair done and have a nice vacation all the time. And so I think that's what happens. The reason why I named the book when self-care is a dirty word is I think people think that self-care is always connected, or often is connected to the amount of money you can spend on something. And yes, it's wonderful to take a vacation. And it's great to go get your hair done and your nails done and a massage. All those things are wonderful, but not everybody has access to that. And so there are other things that you can do. You can go take a walk around your neighborhood. You can sit out on your front porch after the kids go to school and drink your coffee. You can meet somebody for lunch. There's all kinds of things. And so that was my hope for the book. I didn't want it to be just a book that people sit down and read. I wanted it to be like a workbook that would have activities, because I know that the families that I've worked with, and I know I've been there, I don't have the time to sit down and just read a book. I want something to just say, okay, here's this exercise. Let me give it a shot. And there may be an exercise that didn't like that so much, but man, this one, that mandala, color page, I love that. Or, that grounding exercise, yes, ma'am. Or yes, reminding me to drink water and sleep and eat healthy. Yes.
Yes.
So that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, it's very much a workbook, which I love. It's not like in-depth reading, although you've got lots of great information in there. It's really a workbook to work through and try out some self-care. Because I agree. I mean, I do like to get my nails done, and I go periodically to get my hair done. But really, self-care, I think, is something that needs to be built into every day.
Yes.
Starting, I like to start the morning with, I have my cup of coffee, and my husband's retired, so we have our cup of coffee together. Then he goes and does his thing, and I sit with my Bible and my journal, and
Yes.
that's what I work on before. Our youngest kiddo that's still home is 19, so even before he's up, I have my time before all of the crazy starts, right? So, and then going for a walk in the afternoon can kind of help bring me down if it was really stressful throughout the day, and things like that. Building it into our day, I think, is really important to help us sort of maintain um, that balance and that calm. And you mentioned blocked care, because I know that is a big word. And I feel like it's especially with, a lot of the moms that I work with we've got kiddos who've been prenatally exposed to alcohol, and it's like extra hard, it seems. So a lot of us can have that feeling of blocked care. So, um, you know, explain a little bit. I like how you phrased it. Our care can be blocked. So our care and compassion and all of that for our children, we don't necessarily feel, the warm fuzzies because of the big behaviors that we may be dealing with, and, stress. Our cortisol levels are through the roof, that kind of thing. But are there like warning signs that this is definitely blocked care and we need to pay attention?
Right. So if you start feeling like I don't want to be around my child, um, I don't have hope for what can happen. Whereas before you might be thinking, okay, if we can, get through this school year, here's some of my goals for, to hope to get to, thinking about maybe after they graduate high school and things like that. You get to the point where you're like, I don't even know how to get through today. Like, I don't even think we're going to survive the next, week. And not, very cynical thinking. Um, and I mean, this is all natural and it makes sense. If I think about, if I feel threatened by someone, doesn't matter if it's a kid or someone else, I feel like I would think that way. You become complacent. I'm not going to put forth any energy. Um, it's just loss of joy, loss of hope. And so those are some of the indicators, and it's just really you can come out of it. You can you can either find a professional to talk to, or you can work through it on your own. There's a really good book by Lisa Qualls and Melissa Corkum. I believe it's called Reclaiming Compassion. Is that right? It is so good. It's one of those where it's you just only have to read a few pages, maybe 15 to 20, and then they have a few pages that reflect each chapter. Super good. I recommend it all the time to people. So it's a hard situation to be in, and sometimes people feel very guilty for getting to that point, but it happens. Sometimes we are in situations that are very scary and very threatening to us. And unfortunately, sometimes it involves our children. And so, knowing what block care is and what to look for, there are a couple of pages in my book that talk about that. And then moving forward and working through that, there is hope. I promise you can get to the other side.
Yeah, I love that. And some of those first steps, and I think we talked about them a little bit, but we have to explore our triggers, right? What pushes our buttons and why?
Yes.
Expand that.
Yes.
And then getting ourselves regulated, we need to be able to find ways to self-calm. So those are super important things. And I love the workbook, and you give some examples on how to learn how to regulate. How do we self-regulate? So I know we talked about some of those, like going for a walk, meditating. You have like little like exercises in the book to sort of explore, because not like yoga might be one of them, but maybe that's not for everybody. And journaling,
Self-talk. Hmm.
yeah, journaling might be is one, but maybe not for everybody. So you kind of give several examples and some exercises to just sort of like try this and see, right? Try on, going for a walk or deep breathing. I've
Hmm.
discovered, I mean, I guess I've probably always done it, but didn't know there was a phrase for breath prayer, right? So being able to do the deep breathing, and pray, at the same time as you're
Yes.
inhaling and exhaling. You have like a little prayer script you're praying in your head at the same time. That has been hugely helpful for me. So there's lots of things that are that you point out in the workbook, things to try. Any others there that you want to elaborate on?
There's one, and it's kind of like a journal, but well, there's a couple of pages in there that you do kind of like a checkup, a check-in, where, it's got some emojis, where am I at? How do I feel? There's one that I think is really powerful, and I think it's called Who Am I? It's kind of at the earlier part of the book, and it's a really good way to kind of process your childhood, just to kind of bring the forefront of your mind. It's not the same thing as doing like an adult attachment interview, but it kind of brings the same questions that you would ask if you were administering. Who did you feel close to? What was your childhood like? Because I think it's really important for us to bring that to the forefront of our minds so that we can say, oh my goodness, that makes sense. Why I'm struggling, why I'm stuck. And that's what I say to people. If you find yourself stuck in the moment with your kiddo where you just can't figure out what to do next, it's probably about some unfinished business on your side. So be curious about that. And sometimes it's hard because we've pushed it down. Sometimes it's really painful. And so I also, really encourage people to seek out professionals, because you don't want to be doing that alone if it's something that really was painful to you in your past. I don't want anybody to be left by themselves trying to sort all that out. But it's good to be thinking through that and bring that to the forefront of your mind, that prefrontal cortex, so that we are mindfully aware of what we bring to the table.
I love that. And I'll show another picture because there's color. The graphics in here are color. It's really a neat book. So I'm super
Thank
excited
you
for
so
that.
much.
Yeah.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphansny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphansny.org/hope-community.
So I've discovered for myself that being out in nature, mountains, lakes, trees, flowers, fresh air, that has been so healing for myself. Even my 19-year-old son, with fetal alcohol syndrome, who really, really struggles. And we live out in the country, which makes it a little bit easier, right, for us to get outside and that, breathing in the sense of just the fresh air, if it's fresh cut grass or, certain times of the year, listening to the birds. I love to pray when I walk. That has been really, it ministers to me and helps calm me. And I highly recommend that because I do feel, more calm, happier, more able to compassionately care for my kid, right? So life seems better. Like there's hope. Like I just feel rejuvenated, I guess would be the word. So, you talk in your book a little bit in the workbook about, you use the phrase, um, take time to heal, right? What do you mean by that?
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm hoping that that's going to be something that follows up. This book is a book about taking time to heal. So my thought was, I want people to understand how adversity and trauma can impact us in our bodies, and that there are things that we can do about that. Here's some activities to overcome that. And then but then that's not where it ends. We need to continue that. We need to take time to heal our bodies, love ourselves, um, appreciate who we are and who we were made and how we were made, because we are fearfully and wonderfully made by God. And he never promised that our lives were going to be easy and perfect. In fact, I think he kind of gave us a clue that things were going to be hard. And that's why he will always be there for us. And so there is always a place for healing. And I've gone through some very interesting times in my life, and I have been fortunate to be able to work through some of those things. Um, sometimes we worry about risking that repair. There's the rupture and the repair, and sometimes we're worried about sticking our necks out because we don't want to experience that trauma again. And of course, if a situation is simply unsafe, then we obviously don't want to do that. But in situations where we know that we could repair a relationship, or maybe right or wrong that we realize, my goodness, that was a mess up, I shouldn't have said or done that. Being able to come back and repair that and heal that is such a blessing, because if we never do that, then we potentially could walk around being guarded all the time, and maybe we stay in blocked care, or maybe we never risk what could be possible. And so taking that time to work on those hurts from the past and appreciating them and letting them go away so that you can move forward is so important.
So, so important. I agree. So the workbook is When Self-Care is a Dirty Word, Understanding and Taming the Stress Response of a Caregiver. So Angie, where can our listeners grab a copy of your book?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon. And I can also leave you with my email address because it's a self-published book. I don't have a publisher that can make deals for me, but I've got a lot of organizations that are now asking for bulk orders. And so I can order copies on my own at a discount rate and give discounted rates on, 10 or more or 50 or more, that kind of thing. So I can provide that information if there are people out there that work for organizations. I've got people that are providing books for child protective services, families that are involved for child protective services, people that are working with foster families and providing services to them, and so that's been a big blessing for them to see or feel like that this book is helpful to the families that they're serving.
Yeah, well, that would be wonderful because I know we would love to also have you on as a VIP guest in our Hope for the FASD Journey support group.
Yes,
So when we'll have to work out something because I'm sure that especially our support group members would love a copy of the book. So we'll talk about that on the side afterward.
sure.
We want to definitely be able to do that. So we'll make sure that we include your email address in the show notes. Remind our listeners where they can find the book. Do you have a website, Angie, where listeners, how can they connect with you if they want to?
Yes, so I have a website. It's Trust-Based Counseling at let's see, Trust-Based Counseling at is Weebly.com, I believe.
Okay. Actually, I looked it. I
I should
looked
have
it.
been ready for that. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's in my notes. Trust-based counseling
Counseling services.
services.weebly.com. We'll put a link
Weebly,
in the show
yes.
notes so
Thank
nobody has
you.
to remember they can just click on that. So we'll definitely do that because I know our listeners, this is going to resonate with them and they're going to want more. So we'll put that link in there. And you also, Angie, chose the scripture verse that I opened with, which was Psalm 147, verse 3. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Um, why did you pick that verse?
I just got chills when you read it. Man, we all experience hurts, but I think of the children and the families that I've worked with for the last 25 years. And there is just a deep wound that happens in this community. I hold all the experiences that I've had in coaching and training and helping families very sacred. I'm very humbled by being able to hold space for those situations. And I've felt brokenhearted and I've seen brokenhearted. And just to know that there is a loving creator God that never, never, never leaves us and comes near when we call on him. And for me to be able to share with people that is an option, that there is a loving God that is there hurting with you and is with you and will support you and will show you the way. I just think is such a blessing. So there's many scriptures that I love, but that one really stuck out to me when you asked about that.
Oh, love it. Thank you so much. As you know, our listeners, again, are primarily adoptive and foster parents. So we need self-care. You know that. We know that. So as we close, Angie, would you just leave us with some words of encouragement?
Yes. I think you don't underestimate what you are doing when you're working with your children. Um, every little micro moment helps, and you don't have to have all the answers. And actually, the research says that you only have to be doing good parenting 30% of the time. So that gives you permission to mess up because then you get to go back and rupture and repair. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Showing up is a big piece of it. And when you show up for your kiddos, you send that message that you are there with them through thick and thin. And you might not be perfect, but you're going to hang in with them. And that is a huge message for our kiddos that come to us from hard places.
Love that. So true. Dr. Angie Proctor, thank you so much for taking the time out to be on the show today and for all that you're doing to help support children and families and professionals. Thanks so much for being with us.
It has been so fun. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to the adoption and foster care journey. I hope you were inspired and even encouraged by my conversation with Dr. Angie Proctor. If you recognize in yourself that you need to do some work and take care of yourself, you need some of that self-care, grab a copy of her workbook. I'm just going to hold it up for you to see again. It's really neat. The inside pages have lots of color in there. And hopefully I didn't make you like dizzy or anything looking at that. But I would encourage you to grab a copy, work through it. It's fun. It's filled with great illustrations, and it will definitely help you get on the right track there. So hope you check that out. In addition to encouraging you through this podcast, we also want to equip you for your parenting journey. You heard about Hope for the FASD Journey virtual support community. For those of us who are on this journey, raising kids who possibly or definitely have been exposed to alcohol in utero. I offer FASD parent coaching. So if you want more of a one-on-one kind of personal touch there, I do that online, as well as in-person and online workshops. You can learn about all of those, everything to get the links to learn the schedule for upcoming trainings. Easy for me to say. Go to our website, justicefororphansny.org. As a mom of 2 young adults with fetal alcohol syndrome, I spent those early years trying to figure out what was going on. And we had a diagnosis, but I didn't get anything with the diagnosis. The developmental pediatrician handed us a pamphlet on ADHD, and anything I found on the internet way back then was just dark and hopeless. And so the more I have learned over the years and eventually got professional training through Facets, I began to be really passionate about making sure that you all understand and know about FASD because it is so highly prevalent among this population of kiddos that, and most of them are not diagnosed. So we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. So I try to help you to at least understand it a little bit. Every month I offer a free online intro to FASD. So if you're just wondering, is this something that maybe could be, going on with our kiddos, or maybe you do know whether or not they're diagnosed, that's a great free workshop to get that introduction. And maybe you do know, and other people in your kiddos' lives are struggling. The free intro is great for whether it's the babysitter, the grandparents, your adult kids, if you have adult kids who aren't quite understanding what's going on, the Sunday school teacher, youth group leader, school teacher, anybody working with your kiddos, daycare, babysitters. That's a great one. It's free. It's 1 hour. It's live. They can ask questions at the end. So that's super important. I would highly recommend that one. And then I have other versions that are a little bit longer. And also coming up, and you won't want to miss this. If you're able to sign up for this, I highly recommend that you do it. It's the most in-depth training that I offer. It starts on Thursday, May 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's 6 consecutive Thursday nights in a row. And we unpack the Facets neurobehavioral approach, diving deep into not only what FASD is and all of the symptoms, but how to support and accommodate our children, and also how to take care of ourselves and understanding how all of this kind of like that blocked care definitely affects us. So it's a whole lot packed into those 6 weeks, and I encourage you to check it out. If you live in New York State, we did get a grant from a foundation based in New York State, where we have one grant left where we can offer a sponsorship for a scholarship is the word I'm thinking for, a scholarship for this particular training. So again, if you live in New York State and you want to take this in-depth deep dive into FASD, which starts May 1st, email me is how you want to go about that. And my email address is in the show notes. It is Sandra Flach at justicefororphansny.org. But if you email me and tell me I would love that scholarship, if you I live in New York State and I want to take that course. Is the scholarship available? It's kind of like first come, first serve. Whoever sends me that email first will be the one we will award it to. So just want to make sure that you are able to hop on that because that starts just in a couple of weeks. But to learn more about all of our trainings and to see the schedule, again, it's justicefororphansny.org. If you would like to read a little bit, if you enjoy reading blog posts, I do blog about FASD and all of the things over on my personal website, sandraflach.com. You can check that out there. And also don't forget to find and follow us on social media. I have a I have a public, it's very public, Facebook and Instagram pages. If you're looking for me, Sandra Flach. Justice for Orphans has a Facebook and Instagram. And of course, as I mentioned at the top of the show, now the Adoption and Foster Care Journey has a Facebook and an Instagram page. So if you're only going to follow one, follow that one. But we'd love to have you follow all of them. So I hope you check all of those out. And here we are at the bottom. I am so grateful that you chose to spend your valuable time with me today. I'm grateful to have you along on the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans. And check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.